everybody, welcome to the Mana Leaks Dragons of Tarkir set review miscellaneous episode. We're going to be covering the gold cards, we're going to be covering the artifact cards, the single colorless card, the 2 lands in the set, and I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about pre-release, because that's coming up in a few days, as well as the format as a whole. So we're going to jump right on into the first gold card. And we have Arishan Sovereign. This is a 5 green-white creature dragon 6/6 at rare with flying. And it says, whenever Arishan Sovereign dies, you may put it on top or bottom of its owner's library. It's kind of interesting. We've talked about this through and through. 7 mana is a lot. I don't necessarily like playing 7-drops, and unless the format's really slow, I don't know that 7-drops are going to be all that super playable. Now, for 7, we are getting a really good creature. We're getting a 6/6 flyer, which is huge, and if it dies, we're just redrawing it next turn. Now, that's somewhat of a problem. You know, we are losing a draw step, essentially, but we're drawing gas, which is nice, and presumably we cast this once, we can cast it a second time, or a third, or a fourth, and our opponent's just going to keep wasting mana. But I think my biggest issue is just the cost. 7 mana is going to be kind of a pivot point of this set, I think. 7 mana is either going to be something that, yeah, we're going to hit fairly regularly, which would be abnormal. Most sets are not like that. Or 7 mana is going to be something like most sets that we don't hit all that often, and playing a 7-drop is a risk. I'm currently of the mind that I feel like a 7-drop will be a risk, so I can't just be all in on this card. But I do give it a B+. I think it's a really good card, and I think the fact that it's going to just keep coming back and back is really good. That being said, I feel like the 7-drop slot is not very roomy. There's room for 1, maybe, and maybe not even that much. So just be aware of the cost, and make sure you keep your eyes open that first week or two to find out if this format's really slow or not. Next up, we have Atarka's Command. This is the first of the command cycle. It's red and a green, instant, at rare, and it says choose 2. Your opponents can't gain life this turn. Atarka's Command deals 3 damage to each opponent. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. So you get to choose 2 of those. So there are several different configurations that this card can take. Now, the command cycle is interesting. I don't know how great they're going to be in rare. I say great because they're going to be good. They're going to be playable. I'm not sure if any of them are going to be truly great, although there is a pretty good one coming up soon. And the issue is that all the abilities are pretty weak and limited. You know, the first ability, your opponents can't gain life, I don't care. You're not using that in limited. You're just not. Atarka's Command deals 3 damage to each opponent. Well, that's pretty cool. 3 damage. It'd obviously be better if it went to creatures too, but dealing 3 damage in addition to something else, that's cool. For 2, that's fine. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. That's something we've never really seen before. You don't see land being put onto the battlefield at instant speed from your hand. And here we have that. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's ramp, and that's useful and limited. And we have creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. I don't see that being all that useful. +1/+1's not all that exciting. So for me personally, I think this card says you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and Atarka's Command deals 3 damage to each opponent. I think that's the configuration I'm going to use by far the most when I have this card. And it's a pretty good configuration. It's ramp on turn 2. It's 3 damage to your opponent, which is fine whenever. So I think this card is fine. And unfortunately, that's the best and most high description I can give to it. I don't think it's any better than fine. I think it's a C+. I think it's just not that great. Opponents can't gain life this turn. That's irrelevant in limited. And the creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. I just think that's really narrow. I really like the other 2 abilities, but they're just not that amazing. So I'm going to go with a C+ on it. I do feel like these commands are built a little bit more for constructed, be it serious constructed or casual constructed. Next up, we have the Kolaghan Dragon. We have Boltwing Marauder. This is a 3 and a black-red, 5/4 creature dragon at rare. It has flying, and it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So a 5/4 flyer for 5 is awesome. That's fantastic. We talked about how I was really iffy about a 7-mana 6/6 flyer. I'm not iffy about a 5-mana 5/4 flyer. That's awesome. At that point, I'm going to be asking what the downside is. But there's no downside, and in fact, there's an upside. And the upside is that any time you cast a creature, some other creature gets +2/+0. Probably just this guy. Now, we'll talk about some of the other dragons and how some of their abilities, I don't necessarily know how often they're going to happen. We talked about that yesterday with Fauvrey's Regent. With this, you're going to continue casting creatures after turn 5. This ability is going to activate again and again and again, and it's going to be a pretty nice ability, giving something Trumpet Blast until end of turn. So I'm very happy with this guy. This is a solid first pick. This would make me go down the black-red road right away. I give it just a flat-out A. I think it's a great, great, great card. Next up, we have another of the uncommon dragons. We have the Ojutai one, Cunning Breeze Dancer. This is actually the first uncommon gold dragon. Cunning Breeze Dancer is a 4 white-blue 4/4 flyer that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Cunning Breeze gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So this creature's fake prowess is double prowess. We've talked about prowess to death over the last review set for Fate Reforged, plus this one we've talked about fake prowess, and I don't think it's all that amazing because you don't try to play a ton of non-creature spells. Limited is a creature format, first and foremost by far. I don't think that this dragon getting +2/+2 whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which on turn 6 and later is not going to be that many spells. You're going to have used up a lot of them already by then. I just don't think it's that good of an ability. And the stats aren't in any way exciting. I don't really care about a 4/4 for 6. There's better things out there. So I don't really like this dragon. This continues the trend of 6-mana dragons at uncommon that I don't necessarily care about. So I give it a C. It's not bad. It's totally playable, but I think it's also totally cuttable if you have anything else on the high end of your curve. Next up, we have the first of another dragon cycle, and these guys are the big ones. We have Dragonlord Atarka. This is 5 red-green for an 8/8 legendary creature Elder Dragon at Mythic. Atarka has flying and trample, but no double strike this time. It also says when Dragonlord Atarka enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponent controls. Now, here's where we have the 7-mana talk again. 7's a lot, and I don't know if it's going to be doable in the format. So it's going to make me be a little bit cautious on Atarka here. But Atarka's big. Atarka's really big. It's a 5/5 flying trample, so even if you have to slam her into some flyers, there's still some damage that's going to be coming through. Not only that, but when it enters the battlefield, you get to presumably kill something, maybe even a couple of things. The Planeswalkers doesn't matter in Limited, not going to happen. If it happens to you once in the entire season, it's still kind of unlikely that will happen. The downside is it doesn't hit players. I would love for 7 mana if this thing hit players as well as creatures and planeswalkers, but it doesn't. But yeah, you're going to kill something, maybe even a couple of things, and you're going to have a huge flyer on the field. If there's something playable for 7, I think it's Atarka. And of course, with the caveat that if this is a slow format, then wow, does Atarka become playable. But I'm not of the opinion that this is going to be that slow of a format. But if there was something for 7 that I wanted to play, it is this. It's going to get an A- from me. Slightly higher than Arishan Sovereign, also at 7, because this is just a beating. Next up, we have Dragonlord Dromoka. This is a 4 and a green white 5/7 legendary creature Elder Dragon at Mythic. Dragonlord Dromoka can't be countered. Don't care. Doesn't matter in limited. Dragonlord Dromoka has flying and lifelink. Plus, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. I love Dragonlord Dromoka. 6-drop, 5/7, sounds awesome. Throw lifelink on it, absolutely awesome. Flying, of course, because it's a dragon, totally awesome. Can't be countered, I don't care. That's flavor text, doesn't matter for limited. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. That's pretty cool, but again, not 100% important in limited. Far more important in limited than the first ability, that it can't be countered. But it's not going to do a ton for you. Your opponent will just have to play their removal, and will play their removal at sorcery speed and be fine with it. But ignoring the first and last ability, a 5/7 flyer lifelink for 6 is something that I'm very on board with. Dragonlord Dromoka gets an A for me for sure. Next up, we have Dragonlord Kolaghan. Kolaghan is a 4 black-red 6/5 legendary creature Elder Dragon at Mythic with flying and haste. Other creatures you control have haste. Whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in his or her graveyard, that player loses 10 life. That's not going to happen very often. In Constructed, of course, this means that the decks that are playing 4-ofs, which is every deck ever, are suddenly going to be in trouble with this guy if he ever happens to hit the battlefield. In Limited, you don't often get that many duplicate cards. You sometimes get 2 copies of a certain common or something, but that second ability just isn't going to happen very often at all with Kolaghan. So what we're really looking at is a 6/5 5-drop with haste that gives your other creatures haste, and that is totally fine. Just like Dromoka, Kolaghan is 100% playable and awesome just because of what it is on its base stats, ignoring its other fancier abilities. Kolaghan is a flat-out A as well. Totally happy with it. Totally happy with 6-drops, gigantic flyers in this format, if they're big. I don't like 6-drop 3/3s, as we've talked about with the other dragons. I don't like 6-drop 4/4s that get bigger once or twice in the game. I like 6-drop 6/5s with haste. Anyways, moving on to Dragonlord Ojutai. By the way, this is who I'm going for pre-release. We have a 3 white-blue 5/4 legendary creature Elder Dragon at Mythic with flying. Dragonlord Ojutai has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Whenever Dragonlord Ojutai deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. That is the card Anticipation that we reviewed way back in the Blue Set review, and I gave a B- to. I loved Anticipation. Anticipation on a creature that has hexproof when it's untapped, that's a 5/4 flyer for 5? Yes, please. Dragonlord Ojutai seems awesome. 5/4 for 5 flyer, just like we said with Boltwing Marauder, I'm totally on board for. A 5/4 flyer for 5 that has hexproof a good amount of the time, plus is going to be letting me dig and draw cards. Absolutely. A+ from me. Snap pick, and totally going to make me go blue-white when I see Ojutai in there. Next up, we have Dragonlord Silumgar, the last Dragonlord. This is a 4 blue-black 3/5 legendary creature Elder Dragon at Mythic with flying and death touch. And when Dragonlord Silumgar enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control Dragonlord Silumgar. So we trade we trade hexproof for death touch, and we trade the -1/-1 clause for a mind control clause. Now, Mind Control is pretty darn solid. I'm happy to get Mind Control on a big, giant dragon. The Death Touch makes me think that Dragonlord Silumgar is going to be a little bit more of a blocker than he is an attacker in his own right. But hopefully you're going to steal something pretty cool and be attacking with it instead. And, if the Mind Control creatures dies, oh well. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with Dragonlord Silumgar, although I do think he is one of the weaker Dragon Lords, purely based on stats. I mean, objectively based on stats, he's one of the weaker ones. But the Mind Control ability is still pretty solid. Don't sit around dreaming of all the planeswalkers you're going to steal, because you're not. You're very rarely ever going to see a planeswalker on the other side of the board. You're going to be stealing a creature. Dream about all the awesome creatures you might steal, because that's going to happen. Dragonlord Silumgar, being the weakest Dragonlord, is going to get the low grade of A. Still a first pick, still a solid card for sure. Not Ojutai. And, if there was a grade between A and A+, Dramoka and Kolaghan would have it, and Silumgar would get the A. But he gets an A for sure. Next up, we have Dramoka's Command. This is a green-white instant at rare. Choose 2. Prevent all damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. Target player sacrifices an enchantment. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Just like Atarka's Command, I don't give a damn about the first ability. Yeah, sure, here or there it will be relevant and you'll be able to use it to save a creature, but I don't think it's going to be that common. The second ability, I don't care. There's a very tiny number of rare enchantments that I would care about. But the last 2 abilities, it's Hunt the Weak. We build our own Hunt the Weak for much less at instant speed, and that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I would love to play a green-white instant speed Hunt the Weak, and I get to. So I'm going to give this a B-, purely based on the fact that I'm going to be playing this 99% of the time using the last 2 modes only. The second mode, I don't know if I'll ever use it, and the first mode, maybe once or twice I'll use it, and I'll be happy that I had the option. But I'm using this as a super cheap instant Hunt the Week and being very happy with it, so B-. Next up, we have Enduring Scale Lord. Enduring Scale Lord is the green-white uncommon dragon. It's 4 green-white for a 4/4 creature dragon at uncommon with flying, and it says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are placed on another creature you control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Enduring Scale Lord. So basically, this Enduring Scale Lord has Hardened Scales. Hardened Scales was not playable, but if a creature has Hardened Scales on it, is it playable? Well, it's not unplayable, I'll say that, but it's not all that amazing. And again, just like Cunning Breeze Dancer, just like Fate Reforged Dragons, this is a 6-drop 4/4 that you're going to need work. You're going to need to do work in order to get anything else out of it. Now, of course, everybody's going to say, but Bolster is in this format, and Megamorph is in this format. There's going to be counters everywhere. But this dragon's coming down on turn 6 at the earliest. Turn 7, turn 8, turn 9, turn 10, those aren't the turns that you tend to be flipping up Megamorph creatures. Those aren't the turns that you tend to be casting Bolster spells. Those things tend to be, board development, mid-game plays. Your 6-drop should be one of the last things you want to be playing. And so I don't think that this ability is going to trigger nearly as much as you think it is. So I'm going to give this a C. As I said, I don't think it's unplayable, but I think it's totally cuttable. I think there's just a lot better that you could do at 6 than Enduring Scale Lord. Next up, we have Harbinger of the Hunt. This is a 3 green-red, 5/3 creature dragon at rare. It has flying, and you can play 2 and a red to have Harbinger of the Hunt deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. Or you can pay 2 and a green to have Harbinger of the Hunt deal 1 damage to each other creature with flying. So 3 damage to ping everything that's on the ground, or 3 mana to deal 1 damage to everything that's in the air other than itself, which is good. A 5/3 flyer for 5 is fine. The 3 is a downside for sure, but pretty big upside on this guy. The turn after you play this, if you're hitting your lands, you're going to be able to double activate. You're going to be able to pyroclasm the ground or pyroclasm the air, if that should be your concern. Not only that, this guy is going to make combat math a massive headache. Your opponent's going to have to always consider the fact that you could activate this guy. Threat of activation is a a pretty big advantage on your side of the board. So, all told, I'm pretty happy with this guy. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 toughness. He's kind of weak, so he's gonna drop out of the A range for me. But he's gonna sit at a B not B minus. He's gonna sit at a B plus. I think he's still pretty darn good. I remember Atarka. Atarka was awesome, except for that 4 toughness. She died a lot to a number of things. I think this guy's going to die to a number of things as well, unfortunately. So that's going to keep him out of A range. But other than that, I think he's still pretty solid. So I give him a B+. Next up, we have Kolaghan's Command. Kolaghan's Command is a 1 black-red instant at rare, and you can choose 2. You can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Target player can discard a card, probably your opponent, to destroy target artifact. Or Kolaghan's Command deals 2 damage to target creature or player, so shock. So again, like the other commands we've talked about, there's some things I don't care about here. I don't care about target player discarding a card. I don't care about destroying target artifact. Returning target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, we've talked about that, how I haven't been a big fan of card recursion, but I haven't been a big fan of card recursion on its own. The fact that I could tack onto this, dealing 2 damage to target creature or player, that's pretty fine. I would pay 3 mana to shock and recur. I'd be totally okay with that, and I'm totally okay with this card in that mode. Again, just like Atarka's Command, I'm not going to destroy target artifact, and I'm probably not going to do a whopping single discard to my opponent or to myself for that matter. So, Kolaghan's Command is going to get a B from me. I don't think it's nearly as good as... I gave Dromoka's Command a B minus, didn't I? Dromoka's Command was supposed to be the B. Kolaghan's Command was supposed to be the B minus. I don't think this is as strong as Dromoka's Command, but I do think it's better than Atarka's Command, so I give it a B minus. Next up, we have a Planeswalker. We have Narset Transcendent. This is a 2 white-blue Planeswalker, Narset, at Mythic Rare. She starts with 6 loyalty, which is nearly unheard of at 4. For +1, you can look at the top card of your library. If it's a non-creature, non-land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. For -2, you can do when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell from your hand this turn, it gains Rebound. So it's going to come back again next turn. Or for -9, you get an emblem that says your opponents can't cast non-creature spells. Narset sucks for limited. And please don't quote me without quoting that last part. For limited. Yeah, she's got some awesome constructed potential. For limited, she's not that good. That being said, she's not that good for her abilities. She is a damage sponge. Planeswalkers are always good in limited because you cast them and your opponent freaks out. Your opponent suddenly thinks, oh no, he has 7 more life because you're probably going to +1 her at the first turn she comes out. I have to start attacking that, and you're going to be buying several turns as your opponent throws stuff at Narset and not at you, and that's great. So as much as I don't like Narset's abilities for limited, because they don't do anything, they don't establish the board. Her -2 requires an instant or sorcery spell, and we've already talked about how those aren't nearly the majority of your deck. Plus, Rebound, I'm not sold on Rebound as being totally awesome. I'm sold on it being pretty darn good and pretty cool, but there's some work you have to do for that Rebound to really have any value. The -9, the ultimate, I don't care about the ultimate in limited. So Narset's really interesting because she's a good card. First and foremost, that she pays for your draft several times over. Secondly, because she's going to buy you several turns. And I guess you'll get some incidental value out of her +1. So, that's fine, I suppose. But ultimately, she's just bad for limited on her abilities, but totally and utterly pickable and playable for the fact that she's a damage sponge. So she's going to get a B- from me. Probably one of the weirdest ratings I've had to give, talking about how much I hate everything on the card, but love what the card does in a game of Magic. Now, that being said, if I see Narset on the other side of the board, I am never going to attack her. I could not care less that my opponent has her on the other side of the board. I would be happy that they spent a turn playing her. My advice is going to be don't attack Narsa. It's going to be a waste of time. Hopefully my opponents don't hear that, and hopefully my opponents spend a whole bunch of time attacking her. Next up, we have Necromaster Dragon. This is a 3 blue-black 4/4 flying creature dragon at rare. Sorry, I said flying out of order. It has flying. Whenever Necromaster Dragon deals combat damage to a player, you can play 2 colorless. If you do, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, and each opponent puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Well, what do you know? It's a 5-drop 4/4 flying dragon that has a okay ability, I suppose. You know, I don't like the 4/4 flying that much, but it is for 5. You know, we're not talking about one of those uncommon 6-drop 4/4s, so that's a step up already. It's a bit more on curve, at least. You have to get through with this guy in order to get the zombie. And if you're getting through with a 4/4 flyer, the game should be wrapping up relatively quickly. So I don't know that you're necessarily going to need that many zombies out of him. But hey, the zombies are going to be on the ground and blocking some other things and helping you finish the game up. So I guess that's totally fine. The mill is flavor text. You're not going to mill somebody out before you kill them by hitting them with a 4/4 flyer. So just ignore that. It's flavor text. But as it is, a 5-mana 4/4 flyer that can make some zombies is fine. You know, we've seen some better 4/4 flyers out there, but this one's totally fine. I give it a B+. It's not quite as first pickable, I think, but still totally 100% playable. Next up, we have Ojutai's Command. I'm going to get some hate for this one. Ojutai's Command is a 2 white-blue instant at rare. Choose 2. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain 4 life. Counter target creature spell. Draw a card. I don't really like Ojutai's Command all that much for limited. Again, tons of constructed playability here. Countering a target creature spell and drawing a card, cool. That's great in limited. Hold up. Great in other formats. It's okay in limited. Gaining 4 life, I don't care. Returning target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less, I don't care. I can't think of a single 2-drop that I'm thinking, oh man, I need to play a 4-drop and spend a card slot to get that 2-drop back. I can't think of a one. In constructed format, sure, there's a ton of powerful, awesome 2-drops. Snapcaster Mage, I would love to pull back from the graveyard. But we don't have Snapcaster Mage in this format in limited, unfortunately, so I don't think I'm going to be using the first mode. I don't think I'm going to be using the second mode. The third and fourth mode are the modes that I would be using if I played this card, and I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm going to play this card in limited. I'm going to give it a C-. I feel like it's very, very, very cuttable. You know, I don't want to play a 4-mana, 2-color counter target creature spell that I also get to draw a card off of. It just seems way too slow to me. I would rather just win in other ways. Yeah, I'm down on this card, and I'm ready to get some hate for it. I'm going to give it a C-. I think it's pretty cuttable. Next up, we have Pristine Skywise. Pristine Skywise is a 4 white-blue 6/4 creature dragon at rare with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap Pristine Skywise. It gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. So we've got a 6-mana 6/4 flyer. It's okay. You know, 4 is a little bit weak. 6/4 for 7 is what Atarka was, and I think Atarka was a bit better than this dragon was, unfortunately. Making every single non-creature spell in your hand basically God's willing is pretty cool, minus the Scry. But remember, this is limited, where ideally you're not going to have a ton of non-creature spells. And not only that, but not a ton of non-creature spells that you're willing to throw away or at least use at less effectual points of time in order to protect this flyer. I still think it's fine. You know, I think it's still playable. I'm going to give it a B+. I think it's playable. I don't think it's first pickable, however. I think it's something you maybe want to first pick Pack 2 when you have, kind of decided you're going blue-white, or that you want to pick a few picks into Pack 2 even. I think it's fine. I think it's a B+. I just think it's a bit weaker than some of the other dragons. Next up, we have Ruthless Deathfang. This is a 4 blue-black 4/4 creature dragon at uncommon with flying, and it says whenever you sacrifice a creature, target opponent sacrifices a creature. So we've got the good old 4/4 for 6, which we've talked about, me not being a whole big fan of. But this guy seems a bit more fun because I kind of like synergies going on. And the synergy that I like with this guy is Karsi High Priest. Being able to sacrifice things at will to force your opponent to sacrifice things. Plus with Karsi High Priest, you're sacrificing things and getting a board presence. Seems really, really, really fun. Now, of course, you have to open or get past this uncommon dragon, draft it, and then in the one single Fate Reforged pack, get a Karsi High Priest. So it's a little bit of an unlikely scenario that's going to happen, but I could see it being fun. What this guy obviously synergizes with is Exploit. And I don't think that Exploit's going to be running around quite as much as people think. I've seen people saying that Pacifism is not premium because people can just exploit the creature that you throw Pacifism on. If I'm making my creature or my opponent destroy their best creature to bounce a creature or to draw a card, I'm totally okay with that. I don't think Exploit is going to be as super prevalent and format warping as people are predicting it to be. And so as a result, I don't think it's going to make this dragon awesome. I don't think I'm going to be playing 1 million Exploit cards just in order to make Ruthless Deathfang do some things. But I can see some fun stuff happening with him, and I can see a lot of good incidental value coming out of him. So he's probably going to be one of my favorites of the uncommon dragon cycle. I'm actually going to give him a C+. I think he's more playable than he is cuttable compared to the other dragons. I'd even go as high as B- on him just because of the synergy. I don't think the other uncommon dragons, except for the last one that we still have to talk about, have quite as much synergy going on. I think they just kind of have stuff they kind of do. But yeah, I've talked myself up. I'm going to go with a B- on him ultimately. Next up, we have the other Planeswalker. We have Sarkhan again. This time he's Sarkhan Unbroken, and he's Temur, or the clan formerly known as Temur. He is 2 green, blue, red for a Planeswalker Sarkhan at Mythic Rare. He has 4 loyalty to begin. Slightly low for a 5-mana Planeswalker, but that's just because we're getting spoiled with a 6 loyalty 4-mana one. For +1, you can draw a card, then add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That's pretty cool. For -2, you can put a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Very cool. He protects himself. -8, search your library for any number of dragon creature cards and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Whatever. Not a thing in Limited. We've talked about the dragon thing. Yeah, I like Sarkhan. But I don't think he's going to be huge in Limited. He's 3 colors, and I think 3 colors is a mistake in this format. That's my opinion, having not played this format yet, but I think 3 colors is a mistake. Splashing a card is probably going to be fine. We are going to have a land that I'll talk about in a little bit that's going to really help out with that, plus the Fate Reforged lands. So I think it's doable to splash Sarkhan. I think he'd probably be worth splashing. He is a damage sponge, first and foremost. He has that Planeswalker ability that every single one ever printed does. Not only that, he protects himself with his -2, which is awesome. Already better than Narset right there. His +1 is kind of cool. You get a little bit of ramp plus some card advantage out of it. And as I said, his -8 is just something, it's flavor text. It's not going to happen in Limited. In a Scion of the Ur-Dragon Commander deck? Absolutely. But in Limited, no. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with Sarkhan. I'm going to put him in a B+. Of course, you're going to take him. First pick. He's a Planeswalker. He's expensive. He's cool. He's got the awesome factor going on. But in, super competitive, what would you do in an ideal situation? I would give him a B+. Next up, we have Savage Ventmaw. This is the uncommon I was going to say Gruul, but we're not on Ravnica. This is the uncommon Atarka Dragon. 4 red-green for a 4/4 creature dragon at uncommon. It has flying, of course, and it says, whenever Savage Ventmaw attacks, add red, 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 green, green, green to your mana pool. Add 6 mana, 3 red and 3 green. Until end of turn, this mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. So you get this after main phase 1, when you turn this guy sideways, and then it stays in your mana pool until the end step of the turn. So you do get to use it during combat, and you get to use it in your second main phase and your end step until it fully ends, or until it fully goes away in the cleanup step. You know, blah blah blah. 6 mana, 4/4 dragon. I'm not a big fan of those stats. Not in this format, anyways, where there are, as we've talked about, the most flyers ever printed. In a regular format, a 6 mana 4/4 is totally and utterly okay. In this format, I don't think it's quite as good as it would have been normally. Now, this guy pays for himself the first time you attack, which is kind of nice. But push the best case mentality out of your mind. How often in games where you play your 6-drops do you have just a handful of cards left to spend a bunch of extra mana on? You usually don't. Your 6-drop is usually one of the last cards out of your hand. So I don't think that this ability is going to be quite as awesome as people think. I think it's going to immediately appeal to the Timmies out there, just like Frontier Siege did. I heard so many people talk about Frontier Siege is awesome, all this extra mana, I get to cast so many extra cards, and then as people played with it, they realized it's not that good. And I don't think this guy's going to be that good either. Somewhat mediocre stats for this set anyways, and kind of my ultimate uncommon dragon explanation is too expensive for what it does. So I'm going to give it a C. You know, again, not unplayable, but very, very, very cuttable. I'm just repeating myself now. There's other things you can do at 6 that are better than this guy. Next up, we have Silumgar's Command. This is a 3 blue-black instant at rare. It says choose 2, counter target creature spell. Counter target non-creature spell. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Destroy target planeswalker. So, just like the other commands, there's some stuff I don't care about here. Counter target non-creature spell. No, I don't play a negate main deck. Destroy target planeswalker. Doesn't matter in limited. So, just like the other commands, I think there's one configuration of this spell that you're going to be using the vast majority of the time, and that's going to be target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, and return target permanent to its owner's hand. And 5 mana is a lot for those 2 abilities. You know, bouncing presumably a creature, although technically you could return a land or a planeswalker or an enchantment. You know, that typically costs 2. Target creature getting -3/-3 until end of turn. That's usually, 3 mana? So I guess you're paying kind of the cost it would be for these 2 abilities, but you're paying a cost by the fact that these have to be done at the same time. I would significantly prefer 2 cards, one of which was pay 2, bounce target creature, and one of which was target creature gets -3/-3. I consider this to be not the weakest of the commands. That's going to go to Ojutai's command. For limited, please don't, hunt me down for these statements. It's for limited only. But I find it the second weakest of the commands. I'm going to give it a C+. Again, just like the rest of the commands, I think there's only really one choice for the vast majority of situations you'll find yourself in limited. All right, last gold card. We have the last uncommon dragon, Swift Warkite. This is 4 black-red for a 4/4 creature dragon at uncommon with flying, and it says, when Swift Warkite enters the battlefield, you may put a creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So you get to either dash a tiny creature for free, whether or not it has dash, or you get to recur a creature from your graveyard, and if it lives through combat, you get to take it back to your hand, which is pretty cool. You don't really see an ability like that all that often. Now, blah, 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 6 mana, 4/4 flyer, not the best, but this ability is actually decent. We've seen this 3 or less CMC ability before. We saw it on Timely Horde Chief, Timely Horde Mate, Timely Horde Mate, and I loved Timely Horde Mate on paper. And then when we played with it, there never really was that good of a target. Swift Warkite gets around that a little bit by the fact that the target just instantly slams down on the battlefield and is attacking, is a little bit better. But again, as I've kind of mentioned, I don't know what 3-drop I'm desperately wanting to return to the battlefield on turn 6. Now, of course, it's fine to return any 3-drop to the battlefield. That's better than just not returning anything. But whether or not it's good, whether or not that makes this card a high pick, whether or not that makes this a card that is unquestionably includable, is where that question starts to come up. And I don't think it's that great of an ability. It's fine. I'm not saying this dragon's unplayable. I'm going to give it a C+. I'm going to say that it's playable more than it's not unplayable. But I'm going to say that there are times where you are definitely going to cut this card. I think this one is probably worth the 6 mana, unlike all of the other 6-drop dragons that we've seen at Uncommon. But I think it still is not invulnerable to being cut. All right, so that's gold. Gold obviously is powerful because there's a whole bunch of rares and mythic rares in it. Even the uncommons that I'm saying aren't awesome and are cuttable are still playable in most situations. And those are the dragons that I think you're going to see on the battlefield. The uncommon monocolor ones, I just don't think they should be played all that often. But these uncommon multicolors, yeah, they should be played a lot of the time, I think. So yeah, that's gold. Let's move on to artifacts. We have, first up, Ancestral Statue. Ancestral Statue is a 4 colorless mana, as all artifacts are colorless. 4 mana, 3/4 artifact creature golem at common. It says, when Ancestral Statue enters the battlefield, return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this is not a may, this is a downside. You must return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So, this is just kind of middling. It's a 3/4 for 4. It shouldn't really need to have a downside. Ugin's Construct was never really as good as I had hoped. I always had the dream of, I can just play a Morph and then play Ugin's Construct and I don't have to return anything. In order to get that kind of hope out of this creature, you have to hope to not play anything on turns 1, 2, or 3, and that's a bad hope. This card just seems bad to me. It seems like the most desperate of creatures to include in your deck. I don't want to include it ever. I'm going to give it a D+. It's there if you desperately need it, but I wouldn't advise playing it. All right, next up, we're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to do 5 cards at once. We're going to do Atarka Monument, Dramoka Monument, Kolaghan Monument, Ojutai Monument, and Silumgar Monument. All of these are exactly the same except for the mana they produce in cost. They all cost 3 for an artifact at uncommon. They all say tap, add red or green or white or blue, add 1 mana of the color of your Dragon's Brood to your mana pool. And you can pay 4 color, so red, green, or 4 blue, white, or 4 black, blue, or whatever your Dragon Brood is. So you pay 6 mana, 4 plus the 2 colors, to make the monument become a 4/4 red and green or white and blue, whatever, dragon artifact creature with flying until end of turn. These are awful. Don't play these. I've seen so many people look at these and say, well, they're dragons. I get to make them into dragons for those spells that require me to have a dragon to get the best out of it. It's going to cost you 6 mana plus the mana of the Dragon Matters spell that you want to cast. It's Christmas land to think about that. People have said, this is a 4/4 creature flyer that dodges sorcery speed removal. That's awesome. I don't think it is. I think these are worse than banners. I would much rather pay 3, sacrifice my banner, and draw a card than I would to pay 6 to make a 4/4 dragon for a single turn. We've talked about 6 mana 4/4 dragons. We don't have to go over it again. I just think these are bad. I don't ever want to play these. I want to play these even less than I played banners, and we all know how much I hated banners. I'm going to give them a D+. If you're desperate for color fixing for some reason in a 2-color format, I guess you could play these, but you can have them all because I'm not playing them. A D+ from me. All right, next up we have Custodian of the Trove. Custodian of the Trove is a 3-mana 2/5 artifact creature golem at common. It has Defender, and it says Custodian of the Trove enters the battlefield tapped. It's not exciting stats with Defender and the tapped downside. This guy seems pretty bad as well. Pilgrim of the Fires, Witness of the Ages is who this guy used to be in the past and in the alternate timeline. He sure got a downgrade. Even in rarity, he's gone from being uncommon twice to being a common. This just seems pretty bad, you know. I guess it could maybe have a slight place in a grindy control deck that needs a ground blocker, but it's a pretty bad impersonation of an Archer's Parapet, both in cost plus in what it does. You know, maybe this goes in the Assault Formation deck, but I don't want to play this. I'm going to give it a D+ as well. Next up, we have Dragonloft Idol. This is a 4-mana artifact creature gargoyle 3/3 at uncommon. It says as long as you control a dragon, Dragonloft Idol gets +1/+1 and has flying and trample. Well, we've already talked to death how I just don't think you're going to have that many dragons in your deck, and so I don't know that this guy's going to be activated all that often. So he's just a 4/4, or just a 3/3 for 4, which is pretty darn bad. Making him a 4/4 flyer with trample is okay, I guess, but you have to have a dragon and you have to have it on the battlefield, plus this has to be on the battlefield. That's asking for the stars to align in a certain way, and I just don't think this guy's going to happen. Now, he's a 4/4 for 3 if you desperately need that. He's there, but C- for me. I think he's totally cuttable. Next up, we have Gate Smasher. Gate Smasher is a 3-mana artifact equipment at uncommon. It says Gate Smasher can be attached only to a creature with toughness 4 or greater. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample, and the equip cost is 3. This also seems pretty bad to me. This doesn't really seem like something I want to be playing. Again, it seems like it goes in that Toughness Matters deck, which I just, as much as I want it to happen, I don't think it's going to happen very often at all. My big guy should be big enough to do everything I need to do anyways without adding this on, without playing this card. I'd just rather have another card, anything other than this, really. So this is going to get a D- from me. All right, next up is Keeper of the Lens. This is a 1-mana 1/2 artifact creature golem at common. It says you may look at face-down creatures you don't control. So it's half of Lens of Clarity on a pretty bad creature. This is an F. You know, just don't play this. It's awful. Don't play a 1/2 for 1. That's not something you want to do. And the benefit of peeking at your opponent's morphs is just worthless. You should never have played Lens of Clarity. You should never be playing Keeper of the Lens. All right, next up. This is technically a colorless card, so it's not an artifact, but I'm going to do it here anyways. This is Scion of Ugin. This is a 6-mana creature dragon spirit at uncommon, and it's a 4/4 flyer. So we've talked about 6-mana 4/4 flyers and how I'm not a huge fan of them. The fact that this one has absolutely 0 color restriction will bump it up a little bit for me. It makes it a little bit more playable, that I can just play this when my 6th land comes out, always. And it's a dragon, which is relevant in this format slightly. So, you know, I just see this as being sort of middlingly playable. I see it as a solid C, being cuttable if I need to cut it, and not cuttable if I don't need to cut it. So, middle of the road C for me. All right, back to the actual artifacts. We have Spider Silk Net. This is a 0 casting cost artifact equipment at common, and it says equipped creature has +0/+2 and has reach with an equip cost of 2. Most of you don't need to hear this, but some of you will. A 0 casting cost card is not free. It costs a card in your deck, and that's a huge, huge cost. It needs to be pretty darn good at 0 mana to be included as a card in your deck, and this card just isn't that. Giving your creature +0/+2, while relevant in this set with a ton of flyers, I just don't think is worth a card. I would rather just play a creature, even though it's not a free creature. I'd rather play a creature that has reach or that has flying rather than play this card. So I'm going to give it a D-. I just don't think it's very good. Next up, we have Storm Rider Rig. Storm Rider Rig is a 2-mana artifact equipment at uncommon, and it says equipped creature gets +1/+1. It also says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Storm Rider Rig to it, so you don't even have to pay. But you can pay if you want to. The equip cost is 2. So this is really interesting, and this really is an exercise in what is worth a card. So this is basically a 2-mana artifact equipment that you're going to play on turn 2 before you play a creature, and then every creature you play has the option of being 1/1 better. Is that worth a card? I don't know. I think I have to play with this card to find out. I don't think it's awesome. This is absolutely no higher than a C+ at the absolute highest. And I don't know if it's that high. I don't know if +1/+1 to every creature, but only one creature at a time, is ever really going to be worth it to me. I'm going to put this at a C+ to start. I'm going to say that it's cuttable more often than it's not. But I am going to play with it. I'm going to try it at some point. Preferably at pre-release, where things are a little bit more casual, a little bit more fun. As I said, this could go as high as a C+. It could go all the way up to more playable than it is cuttable, but I'm going to keep it at more cuttable than it is playable. Next up, we have Tapestry of the Ages. This is a 4-mana artifact at uncommon, and it says pay 2, tap it, draw a card. Activate this ability only if you've cast a non-creature spell this turn. So it has fake prowess. This sounded fine after the first sentence. Pay 2, tap, draw a card. Yeah. But the fact that I have to have played a non-creature spell of which I'm going to be playing 5 or 6 or 7 of in any given deck is just bad. Because I'm going to have to have paid for that spell first off, and then have 2 left over to draw a card at sorcery speed or instant speed, but still on my turn. You could, of course, draw it on your opponent's turn if you cast something, but I just think it's going to be rare that you're going to really want to tack 2 mana onto your spell to draw a card, in addition to actually playing this card in your deck. I think this is just an F. I think it's just unplayable. Give it a shot if you want to, but I strongly, strongly recommend not doing it. All right, last artifact, we have Vial of Dragonfire. Vial of Dragonfire is a 2-mana artifact at common that says pay 2, tap it, sacrifice Vial of Dragonfire. Vial of Dragonfire deals 2 damage to target creature. It's here. We've been waiting for this. We had that Artificer in Fate Reforged that mentioned Vial of Dragonfire, and we hadn't seen it yet. Now we know what it does, and it's just like Heartpiercer Bow. It's just kind of there. It's not super playable in my mind. There was a much better card called Blazing Torch in Innistrad, which I believe was originally from Zendikar or Worldwake or something like that, which was decent because you got to equip it to a creature and tap that creature to throw it and deal 2 damage. This you have to pay for it, plus it only hits creatures. It doesn't hit players, which kind of sucks. So ultimately, I think I'm just going to give this a C-. There's a number of other spells I would prefer to play over this. I think it's much more cuttable than it is playable. All right, 2 cards left to go. We've got Evolving Wilds. This is a land at common that says tap, sacrifice Evolving Wilds, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. This has been printed a number of times. I first experienced it in Innistrad, and it's a great card. Not a bomb, not an A, not a first pick. Don't take it to mean that. It's just a great utility card. It's amazing at letting you splash. It's amazing at letting you, play that one off-color removal spell. It's amazing at fixing your mana. It's great. That being said, it's a C as far as the pick goes. It's something that you're going to pick relatively late, and it's only going to go in certain decks. You're not going to play this in a flat out 2-color deck, because the land that you go and get does come in tapped. It's okay on turn 1 or turn 2 where you're not going to play anything, and you can do this on your opponent's turn. But it's just a good utility card for when you need it, and that's usually when you're playing a third color as a 1 of, or maybe a 2 of. All right, the second land we have is Haven of the Spirit Dragon. We've had the Tomb, we've had the Crucible, now we have the Haven. This is a land at rare, and it says a lot. It says tap, add 1 to your mana pool. Tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast a dragon creature spell. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice Haven of the Spirit Dragon. Return target dragon creature or Ugin Planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. This is garbage. Don't play it. As we've talked about, I don't think you're going to have more than 1 dragon at best in a deck, or at least in a good deck. So getting a mana of any color to your mana pool doesn't seem that good, not in a 2-color format anyways. And being able to return that dragon to your hand at the cost of putting this land in your deck and playing this land just doesn't seem worth it either. I've got to give this a stone F. Kind of a down card to end the set review on, but that's the way the alphabetical order crumbled. So I just want to go quickly over a few things about this format. I don't want to hammer home stuff. You've hopefully listened to all the previous videos. If you haven't, definitely go back and check them out. But I don't think dragons are going to be as prevalent as people think in any given deck. I think on average you're going to have 1, maybe 2 playable dragons in any given deck. Flyers are going to be very prevalent, of the Aven variety and the Mistwolf Kirin variety and the Spirit variety and the other variety, not just dragons. So flyer specific removal may be main deckable. That's going to be something to really look out for. The speed of the format is another big question that's looming in my mind right now. There's a lot of really powerful, but in many formats prohibitively expensive cards in this set. If this set is slow, that cost is less prohibitive. If this set is as fast as it has been, or as other sets have been, those cards are going to be pretty hard to play because you're not necessarily going to get to the 7 mana. So be on the lookout for that. The final thing I wanted to talk about is pre-release. People usually at this time ask me, well, what clan are you going? What clan should I go? What clan is going to make me win the pre-release? And you're going to find articles out there where people say this is the best clan, and this is the second best clan, and this is the third best clan. It doesn't matter. This may partially be me as a judge who likes to build the community and likes to make players involved and have fun, but have fun with the pre-release. The dragon clan you should pick is the dragon clan that you most like, the color combination that you like. You have, we don't know yet, but probably a 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 chance of getting the mythic dragon lord of the dragon clan that you choose. So pick the clan of the dragon that you want a chance at playing. Pick what you think you're going to enjoy, because ultimately you're getting just a single pack that is seeded for that clan. The other 5 packs are just randomized boosters. I have done sealed events where I've chosen a certain color combination as my box, and it's been unplayable as those 2 colors, and I went another color and did well. So, pick the color combination that you want, that you think is going to be fun. I'm going as Ojutai, honestly, because I wanted the blue dye. It's sparkly and it looks really nice. I chose that before Ojutai was spoiled. I really like the Dragon Lord Ojutai card, so I'm happy to have a chance at it. But I'm going blue-white just because I want to play blue-white, because I like the dye, because I like the Dragon Lord Ojutai. If I liked a different color dye or something like that, I would have gone a different clan. Sealed is all about deck building. It's all about who can take this pile of cards and make a good, consistent deck out of it. It's not who chose the right dragon clan. So don't worry about that. Go and have fun at the pre-release. And if you're thinking about going to a pre-release, you haven't been to one before, you're nervous, you're not quite sure, go. Pre-releases are the absolute single best experience for a new player to get involved. The vast majority of the players there are going to be extraordinarily helpful to you. The tournament organizer will be helpful. If there's a judge there, the judge will be super helpful. These are meant to be community builders. These are meant to be fun events. If you haven't been to one, go to one. They are super, super, super fun. Yeah. That's going to wrap it up for the Dragons of Tarkir set review. This has been my first large set review. The Fate Reforged was the first one I did. This was definitely a bit easier after I have already had experience doing one set, but it was definitely still a lot of work. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback, and I want to thank everybody for that feedback. It's been great to hear. Definitely inspires me to keep on going with this channel and pumping out more and more content. On that note, there's going to be some new series starting up, so you want to stay tuned for that as well. So yeah, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, definitely let me know in the comments below. You can also find me on Twitter at The Mana Leak. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/themanaleak. And links to those social media networks are in the show notes below. You should also subscribe to my channel. That will keep you up to date on the latest videos when they come out. Spiky Saturday, Wacky Wednesday, and future series that may start sooner than you think. Who knows? You can subscribe with the little button below this video, or just on the button that's going to be on the outro slide in just a few seconds. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all next time.